IP Psych, these are your Module 50 notes, the last ones for the week, on parents, peers, and early experiences. Our essential questions are: how do we perceive and understand ourselves? Our learning targets: I can discuss the interaction of nature and nurture and the determination of behavior. It's really like the overall theme for today. 2, I can discuss maturational challenges in adolescence, including related family conflicts. That'll be more with what you do after the notes, but still related to this topic. And finally, key contributors in developmental psychology in the area of social development and childhood. We're going to get a little bit more Albert Bandura today and the social learning theory. Starting now. So a little reminder about Bandura's social learning theory. Again, we just talked about this in our last module as well. This is that theory that we learn social behavior by observing and imitating and being rewarded or punished. So really what we're going to kind of look at today is how does our environment affect things that are going on biologically? First, like what's going on in our brain and how is that affected by our experiences? And then at the end, I'll start to talk about in what ways do your parents influence you more? And in what ways do your peers influence you more through what you see them do or what you hear discussed in your household? So we're going to start off with a video that really talks about how does your experiences change what's going on in your brain. So title, it is a little documentary, so not super exciting, but gives really good information on how experiences help build and change your brain's architecture, really what's going on at the level of your neurons. So here you go.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
Okay, so let's look a little bit more about what this means. So I always forget when I put in these questions. So first, let's have you write just a short summary of what you heard in the video. So explain how our experiences build brain architecture. So go ahead and write. Okay, so hopefully you said something that, one, as we do things, as we experience things in our life, those neurons that are involved in those processes of those experiences, those connections strengthen. And then the things that we're not using anymore that don't have those same experiences connected with them, those actually fade away in this process called pruning. So we'll talk more about that. So first, just to show you some research that was done in the 60s. This is Rosenzweig, I probably butchered that name, Kretsch and their colleagues. And they did experiments on rats where some of the rats they put in impoverished environments, meaning very little things for the rats to interact with, whether it's other rats, whether it's things to play with, things to do. And then the other rats they put in what they called enriched environments, where there were lots of activities for the rats, other rats in the community. And they looked to see what happened with the neurons in each of those rats' brains. And what they found is the rats in the impoverished environment, you can see their neuron still had some connections here. But in comparison to those in the enriched environment, look at how many more branches are coming off of these dendrites. And they had many more synaptic connections with other neurons. So there was actually a more robust cerebral cortex in the rats that were in those enriched environments compared with those in the impoverished environments. So that tells us that the outside experiences, this idea of nurture, really can change the way that the brain functions as we get older, as we grow, and either experience new things like having a parent read to us, play with us, or not. So if we take a look at these images, we know that brain maturation provides many neural connections. We talked about this earlier on in the week, where looking at these images at child's birth, we have some connections. By 7 years old, look at tons of connections, and your brain does that much of this on its own. Even without a lot of outside stimulation, your brain still makes connections. That's ingrained within our DNA to do so. However, nurture helps to trigger synaptic pruning, meaning the experiences that we have, how I spend my time, whether it's learning another language, learning a particular skill, sport, dance, singing. Think of those things that you do really well, okay? Those connections get even stronger. And the stuff that you don't practice, that you don't do over and over again, your brain goes, meh, I don't need this anymore. I don't need these connections. It's almost like wasted energy. Let's get rid of them. And by puberty, your brain is really significantly starts cutting back or pruning those excess synapses. So you can see that by 15, there are less synapses compared with 7, but those synapses are going to be way stronger, more efficient, better, faster than what you had at 7. Okay. Let me give you another example. Okay. If you had a lack of visual experiences, maybe there was something physically wrong with your eyes to where you couldn't see. Okay. Your brain is good at shifting how it's using that part of your brain, if you remember plasticity, and will either divert those cells to other tasks, to other uses, or they'll just die off because they're not being used. So your brain wants to be efficient at what it does. It strengthens the connections, the synapses that we use often, and gets rid of or prunes those that we don't. So to lead us into this next part, and there's really not much more notes. I have just a couple questions after this, and you're going to be exploring this idea a little bit more in class. So we're going to listen to our podcast first, and then I'm going to give you time to work on this last piece, where you're going to find that there are some things in our lives where our parents have more of an influence, and there are other things that our friends have more of an influence. I'm sure you can guess some of that. I'm going to have you write that now. So who has bigger influence, your parents, friends? And you can explain, like, where do your friends have more influence? Where do you think your parents have more influence? So go ahead and write. Okay, so there is no right or wrong answer here. We're just going to see if you find that what you think does matches up with what the research says about what has the bigger influence over what area of your life. So now I have just 2 multiple choice questions for you. So 1, Compared with rats raised in an enriched environment, which of the following is true of rats raised in isolation? So go ahead and select. The correct answer is A, their brain cortex is less developed. And last one, neurologically, what is the function of pruning? Go ahead and choose. The correct answer is E, pruning eliminates unused neural pathways. That is the end of our Module 50 notes. I hope you have a great day.